When people think of old Hollywood, the glitz, the glamour, the flashing bulbs and red carpets, they rarely picture addiction. But behind those velvet curtains, behind the perfect smiles and polished studio press releases, there was a world most people never saw. The golden age of Hollywood, from the 1920s through the 1950s, was built on image. Studios crafted their stars like products, flawless, desirable, and larger than life. But to keep up with the pace, to maintain those grueling schedules, and to deal with the crushing pressure of fame, many of those stars turned to something much darker: pills, powders, potions, whatever it took to keep going. And the studios, they didn't just know about it, they fueled it. This wasn't just occasional drug use. This was an institutionalized, industrial-level system of control and dependency, all hidden behind a polished facade. It started in the silent film era, when actors were expected to work insane hours with barely any rest. They had to shoot scenes over and over under blazing lights, memorize lines at lightning speed, and appear in public constantly, always smiling, always flawless. Sleep, not an option. Fatigue, weakness. And that's when drugs like amphetamines and barbiturates became the industry's dirty little secret. Uppers to keep them awake, downers to help them sleep. It became a cycle that was hard to escape. Studios often had in-house doctors, not for care but for control. They'd hand out pills like candy if it meant the star could keep filming. It wasn't healthcare. It was productivity management masked as compassion. Actors became test subjects in a high-stakes experiment in image preservation. Take Judy Garland, for example. She was just a teenager when MGM signed her. They wanted her bright-eyed and energetic for every performance, so they gave her amphetamines to keep her slim and perky. Then, when the day was over, they gave her sleeping pills to knock her out. Rinse and repeat. Her entire adolescence was spent on a chemical roller coaster. By the time she was in her 20s, she was already dependent. And it didn't stop there. Her struggles with addiction haunted her entire life, leading to public breakdowns, hospitalizations, and eventually her tragic overdose at the age of 47. But Judy wasn't an isolated case. She was just one of the most visible. Her story is heartbreaking not just because of her talent, but because she was a symbol of what the system did to young women who were too valuable to protect and too vulnerable to escape. Another name? Marilyn Monroe. On the outside, she was America's sex symbol, seductive, radiant, the perfect starlet. But inside, she was crumbling. She battled severe anxiety and depression, and she leaned heavily on prescription drugs just to function. Pills for anxiety, pills for sleep, pills to numb the emotional pain. Her behavior on set became erratic, not because she was a diva, but because her mental health was spiraling out of control, and the people around her were more focused on finishing the film than helping her heal. The same industry that made her a star also helped destroy her. Her overdose in 1962 wasn't just the end of a life, it was the ultimate symptom of a system that used people up and tossed them aside when they broke. Monroe was a product, and when that product malfunctioned, Hollywood replaced her, not with support, but with silence. Studios also had their eyes on male actors. Mickey Rooney, Errol Flynn, and even Spencer Tracy were known to struggle with substance abuse, often in secret. They were under the same crushing expectations. Be manly, be charismatic, be perfect. And if you couldn't, fake it with a few pills or drinks. The era of studio contracts gave these companies absolute control over every aspect of a star's life. What they wore, who they dated, what they said in interviews, and especially how they performed. If drugs kept the machine running, the studios kept the supply flowing. And if the press started sniffing around, they'd cover it up, pay off reporters, feed them alternate stories, anything to protect the brand. These actors lived in golden cages, trapped by fame, weighed down by contracts, and numbed by substances they couldn't live without. Even after someone's death, the truth was often buried. Studios would craft clean, tragic narratives. They'd blame exhaustion or illness or emotional stress, anything but drugs, because admitting a star had a substance abuse problem wasn't just bad press. It risked pulling the curtain back on an entire industry's dark underbelly. And in the golden age of Hollywood, perception was everything. Better to protect the myth than to save the person. And the public? Most fans never suspected a thing. They believed the press releases. They believed the glossy magazine spreads. And those who did question the official story were dismissed as conspiracy theorists or gossip mongers. The studios controlled the narrative, and the silence was often more powerful than the truth. By the 1950s and 60s, some of the shine began to wear off. As more stars began to suffer public breakdowns or die under mysterious circumstances, the media started asking tougher questions. But even then, the full truth didn't come out. Not really, because the system didn't collapse, it evolved. Instead of studio doctors, personal doctors took over. Instead of hush-hush cover-ups, there were carefully crafted PR campaigns. The addiction crisis didn't disappear. It just got better at hiding. New faces replaced old ones, but the old habits stayed. And while the names changed, the cycle of pressure, dependency, and silence remained stubbornly intact. Old Hollywood's drug problem wasn't about party culture. It wasn't just about celebrities blowing off steam. It was systemic. It was a business model, an industry that valued output over health, image over reality, profit over people. And it left behind a trail of broken lives, silent suffering, and untold stories. Every dazzling premiere had a dark backstage. Every red carpet was shadowed by pain. This wasn't just a dark chapter. It was the script written between the lines of every major film from the era. So the next time you see a black and white photo of a classic film star, smiling, glamorous, larger than life, remember that behind that image might have been a person quietly crying for help, a person fed pills by the same people who praise their performance, a person whose legacy is both dazzling and tragic, because old Hollywood didn't just build dreams, it buried a lot of pain along the way. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we stop worshiping the illusion and start telling the truth behind it.